Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the 2025 Audiology student event. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us. My name is Allison Tran. I am National NISLA's president-elect, and I'm a first-year audiology student at San Jose State University in California. If you don't know already, National NISLA is a for-student, by-student organization that supports students as they transition from a student to a young professional. So whether you're graduating soon or just starting your undergrad journey, we are here to support you, and our mission is to inspire and empower students like you and I. Today's program was developed through a collaboration between ASHA Audiology and National NISLA to provide audiology students with useful information. We hope that you can leave today's event with a better understanding of ASHA certification and increased interest in advocacy and some inspiration and encouragement from our audiology panel. I'm joined today by Marquita Markison, a member of ASHA's audiology practices team.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Allison, for a great welcome to today's audiology student event. As Allison said, my name is Marquita Murkison, and on behalf of ASHA's audiology team, welcome and thank you for attending today's virtual event. In order to support audiology as a profession, it is very important that ASHA supports our audiology students, which, to be honest, is the motivation for today's event. We hope that events like today's will contribute to finding future audiology subject matter experts, future presenters, and future leaders of the profession, as we expect that those future needs are going to be filled by those of you who are students today. All right, everyone, welcome back to the panel portion of our virtual audiology student event. We are now joined by a panel of 6 talented audiologists working in different settings. Today's panel was purposely assembled to give students a chance to hear from a panel that's diverse in the length of experience, perspective, interests, and settings. Each of these audiologists excitedly accept the invitation to have the opportunity to reach students through today's event. So we're going to start off by having each panelist briefly introduce themselves, including the setting in which they work, their areas of interest within audiology, and why or how they became an audiologist. And we're going to go in alphabetical order, starting with Dr. Sophia Barber-Reyes.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Sophia. I am an audiologist at Here USA. I began my journey of becoming an audiologist when I was around 8 years old on Bring Your Child to Work Day. And they wouldn't let me be with my mother, who's a teacher. They put me with an audiologist, and I fell in love since there. At Here USA, I work at a very unique Here USA. I'm able to do diagnostic testing, I'm able to do balance testing, and I also see pediatrics, which is my favorite part of my day.
And we have Dr. Denise Cardona next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Denise. I'm an audiologist with Special Olympics International, so all of my job is done remotely. Thank the Lord. My job as an audiologist started in college. I was taking some SLP courses. For sure, thought that I would be an SLP. Then I saw the light and converted when one of my professors actually owned an audiology practice and said, Denise, I think that you should come with me to my office and help out in the summers. I think for him it was more free labor, but for me, I had an exciting time with him. And afterwards, I was just like, yes, this is what I want to do. So again, my work with Special Olympics is all public health. I help with health screenings and hearing screenings. And like I said, I do it internationally and domestically. Definitely a unicorn job.
Wonderful. And next we have Dr. Kwame Curtis.
Hey, yeah, Kwame Curtis. I am in St. Louis, Missouri. I have a private practice now. I've been doing this for about 2 years. Prior to that, I was in the Air Force for 20 years. And that was probably a more interesting story on how I got into the Air Force. But how I got into audiology is mainly the same way. I had some professors that were very not say persuasive, but certainly very interesting. I had a neuro professor, and Tina McNamara was one of my supervisors who I was mentored by. So that's kind of how I fell into audiology.
Awesome. And for those that don't know, Tina McNamara is a former ASHA president.
Okay.
So next we
Sorry about
have,
that.
yeah. No, thank you, Dr. Curtis. Next we have Dr. Crystal Riska.
Hi, everyone. Crystal Riska. I am an associate professor at Duke University School of Medicine. I work in an academic medical center, and I'm probably the weirdo audiologist on the call in that I haven't worked with hearing aids or cochlear implants in, I don't know, over a decade probably now. So I primarily do research as part of my day job, and then I oversee our research program for the ENT department, and I see patients clinically about 30% of the week, and I only see patients for inner ear balance assessments. So I do vestibular assessments in my clinical practice. Kind of similar to many folks on the call, I think I sort of fell into audiology as well. I was a comm sciences major and realized really early on that audiology spoke to me because I love numbers and science, and I really, it really just jived with my personal interest.
I purposely wanted to make sure that I had every aspect of audiology represented. So thank you, Dr. Riska. Next, we have Dr. Dakota Sharp.
Welcome, everybody. I'm a clinical assistant professor at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, but primarily work as a pediatric cochlear implant audiologist here at the Children's Cochlear Implant Center at UNC. Another fell into it kind of story. I originally went to college thinking I wanted to be a teacher, specifically in special education, and I started taking some extra special education classes, and one of them happened to be on communication disorders, speech and hearing. And as a technology lover, the person in my family who sets up the new phones and all that, it really just spoke to me in the pediatric science and technology, the highlights of audiology that really just jumped out to me. So from there, took off my freshman year and have been loving it ever since. And yeah, worked with a lot of students here through the UNC audiology program, as well as doing some clinical research. We also have our mobile unit, which is up and running now. So we're doing some diagnostics, hearing aid and cochlear implant program kind of in far reaches of the state, up to about like a 3-hour radius from our center. So families don't have to drive. Some families are driving like 5 hours just to get to our center. Now it's more like 2. So lots of cool things going on there. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Dr. Sharp. And last but definitely not least, we have ASHA's own, Arkansas's own, Dr. Donna Smiley.
Thank you, Marquita. I am Donna Smiley, and I'm excited to be here with you all today. It's always fun to get to talk with future audiologists. As Marquita mentioned, I work for ASHA now. I am the Chief Staff Officer for Audiology here at ASHA. I've been here going on 5 years. And prior to that, I worked for a little over 30 years in the state of Arkansas, mostly doing school-based and pediatric audiology services. So Crystal, I'm in the same boat with you. However, I haven't fit a hearing aid and since I needed a screwdriver to do so. So for those of you who understand what that means, that's a long time ago. I obviously my interest area really has been school-based audiology, even since the beginning of my career when I was a graduate student. And the way that I found audiology was kind of a little bit of a different pathway, but I actually started college as a nursing major, and I needed a work-study job, and the professor in communication sciences and disorders needed a work-study student. And so the first time I ever met with her, I was a freshman in college, and she said, "You know what? I'm going to get you to change your major." And I was like, "No, you're not." Of course, I probably said it much nicer than that. And sure enough, she did. And it was weird because she actually had a PhD in speech and language science, but she had just gone and obtained her C's in audiology also. So I had the privilege of working with her on 2 research projects that were very related to audiology. And so it just really helped me know that that was something that I wanted to do. So while I have a background in communication sciences and disorders in my undergrad, I did choose the dark side. As Denise said, she came over to the or saw the light, and I came over to that side too. So I have not looked back. I have loved being an audiologist for my entire career, and I've had the opportunity to do a lot of different things in that time.
Right, wonderful. So let's start off by, I'm going to invite the students to ask their questions. And again, you are welcome to put your questions in the chat, in the Q&A. If you would like to unmute or turn your camera on, that would be awesome too. But in the event, to warm up the crowd just a little bit, I'm going to start us off with just a topic of growth and development, which I'm going to define as a continuous process of developing and improving your skills, knowledge, and abilities to advance your career and achieve your professional goals. So again, you can put your comments, your questions in the comments, but I'm going to start off with this first question for Sophia. And so my question is, what was the transition like from completing your doctorate to starting clinical practice? And what advice would you give to current students preparing for this transition?
So the transition from being a student to a clinician was the most exciting thing that I've worked for 8 years. However, it was extremely overwhelming. You go from a very structured academic environment to making real clinical decisions that directly affect patients. At first, I felt a lot of the weight of the responsibility, but I realized how well my training prepared me and also residency or externship year. My biggest piece of advice is always to give yourself a little grace. You're not expected to know everything your first day, your first year, your second year. Confidence comes with experience and it takes time. Lean on your preceptors, ask questions. And one of my preceptors will always say, stay curious. And I still use that today. Still reach out to my preceptors today, 2 years out of school. Still reach out to members of my cohort when I come across challenging cases that I need another eye. The most important thing is having a network of support, and it reminds you you're truly not alone in this field. Everyone in audiology is very welcoming, and there's always someone willing to lend a hand.
That's so comforting. And even though I certainly sometimes will feel like a one-woman band sometimes, that's very true that the best resource you have are your fellow audiologists for sure, Sophia. I'm going to move on. My next question is for Dr. Curtis. So, Dr. Curtis, you retired after an impressive career in the U.S. Air Force. Thank you for your service. Can you share what prompted you to choose a career in the military and how this shaped your career as an audiologist? And how, I'm going to make some assumptions, if your career in the military influenced your decision to move to private practice?
So, how I ended up in the military is this is gonna go back a ways. And so there was a recruiter that came, and actually he didn't come to our class, he came to the class ahead of me. And this was a little bit prior to 9/11. And so I remember asking people about the recruiter because I was just interested in what he said in that class. And then 9/11 kind of made me, I never thought I would be in the military. And so that was kind of my calling when that happened. And I had a year to go at that point. And so that's kind of how I got into the military. But the things that she told me about what the military offered was a top-notch education, never having to worry about equipment, because we know we're a very equipment heavy profession, never having to really worry about bean counting and trying to worry about how much things cost, or not being able to do something because it's going to cost the patient. So that was really, but the biggest thing about the military was just the top-notch education that I got. And I certainly could and go on about that offline, but anyhow, that's kind of how I got into the military. That path that took me through the military was because I was able to see so many things and practice at the full scope of our license. Where, if I went somewhere, like when I ended up in Italy, I had to be a pediatric audiologist because there was no other audiologist there. When I went to England, we had a lot of flyers, so I had to become a vestibular audiologist, and so on. And I owned my own clinic, which was again another thing that was very exciting every time I got somewhere new. As I left the military and transitioned into private practice, I really, at that point in my career, I had been kind of an executive. I was doing things outside of military, and I wanted to kind of continue that. But what really happened when I started to look at some of the places I wanted to land, because of my military background and because of the way we worked and because of the way we got along, I didn't mesh with a whole lot of companies out there. They had different value systems that I had, and so the only person I felt like I could trust was myself. So that's kind of how I fell into private practice. And I knew nothing about private practice. I want to foot stomp that, and I'm still learning. And I'm not a huge practice. I'm just a small guy, and so I feel like the Air Force didn't really prepare me for that when it comes to accounting and things like that. But I'm glad I made that choice. I don't think anyone's ever upset about going into private practice.
Excellent. I love the only person I really can trust is me. That's a great that's a great place to be, I think. So congratulations. My next question is going to go to Dakota Sharp. And so Dr. Sharp, as someone who is passionate about mentoring and precepting graduate students, what qualities and skills do you encourage your students to focus on or to try and develop?
It's a really good question. I think Sophia answered it better than I could with the line that I use that exact same line with students, which is stay curious. The most memorable students, the ones who I have the most long-term mentorship relationships with, are the ones who were asking questions in clinic, who were showing me. It's hard in a moment when, if you're not the one doing hands-on things as a student, to show a preceptor like, okay, I understand what's going on here. But a good way to show that is by asking questions. That's going to lead to discussions between you and your supervisor that otherwise wouldn't have happened. So that kind of curiosity, that willingness to learn, I pride myself on being the most like corny term, which is a lifelong learner, right? Like that's super corny, but really when you have that attitude, it leads to so many more opportunities for yourself. It leads to like different clinical roles that you wouldn't have expected for yourself just because you were willing to try something new. I'll be honest, it oftentimes leads to more responsibilities and things that you have to do that you wouldn't have had to do if you not asked any questions. But a lot of protocols have improved on teams I've been on because somebody was willing to ask, why are we doing it that way? Why this isn't working as well for me? What's the support behind why we do things one way or another? So I think asking questions is probably one of the best things you can do, or just having a general curiosity and an excitement when it comes to learning. I started an audiology podcast for like this exact reason, which is I just love getting nerdy about audiology and asking people questions. And I can't even tell you how many things I've learned, how many people I've met, just all of the cool things that it's led to, just because I wanted to keep learning things. And you can keep reading journal articles. That's a great thing. I would recommend it. You can be a part of Facebook groups where people ask questions and you can see great discussion. Not always the best discussion, but usually pretty good discussion, right? There's lots of places that people are communicating and professionals are asking questions, not just as students, but even years into their careers that you can be a part of and engage with. But yeah, I would say that's still, it doesn't matter how many years you've been doing this. If you're not willing to ask questions, you're not going to learn anything new, and new opportunities won't come for you.
Absolutely. And that has prompted our first question from our students. And the question is, what mindset can we go in with that can help us know what questions to ask or how we can ask the right question? So Dakota, I'll stay with you if you want to take a shot.
Absolutely. So this is something students struggle with. I love to, I feel like it's a lot of the energy of your supervisor, right? Sometimes like, okay, if I ask a question, they're going to think I don't know what I'm doing, and that's going to lead to them not letting me do something. So there's a little bit of reading your supervisor there. But I think you might be surprised, or it's hard to most students are in pretty quick rotations. They might not be in the same clinic for a very long time. And you might be the kind of person who it takes a while to warm up and feel comfortable talking to someone or asking a question is a vulnerable thing, right? You have to admit that you don't know something when you're going into that conversation. So I would say, don't overthink it would probably be my biggest advice. Don't overthink their reaction, how they're going to judge what your question is. Just go into it with the true, intent of learning something new. I mentioned before using it as an opportunity to start a discussion on what you do know, and I do still think that's a cool thing too. So like, if you're in a clinical situation and you see a supervisor doing something a way you didn't learn how to do it, which is going to happen. That's always one of the most stressful things for students is like, I learned to mask this way. They did it that way. I literally don't know am I supposed to correct them? Are they doing it wrong? This is a question, right? This isn't like I'm correcting you. This is, oh, maybe, I don't know, some students will be like, I learned it this way. And that's certainly a way to do it too. I wouldn't care, but I know some people might be a little bit more territorial about the way they do things. You could say, oh, can you tell me more about how you mask? I'm like trying to learn all of different ways to do that, right? Just that it's not just a question, it's curiosity. It's this like, I'm interested in this, not I already know the answer and I'm going to ask a question to prove it. It's I'm genuinely curious on how people do things differently. So I would say bringing it back to a place of genuine curiosity and not overthinking what your question is going to be would probably be my biggest pieces of advice. But I bet other people here have even better answers than that.
And so let's swing that. I'm going to pose that. I see Donna's taken her mic off. I feel like she has something to offer.
Well, Marquita, what I wanted to piggyback on what Dr. Sharp said is that the opposite is also true. Don't be afraid of questions. Don't be afraid of being asked a question. Sometimes students will say, "Oh, I don't want anybody to ask questions if I present a case or if I'm the person doing the demonstration or whatever." Don't be afraid of questions. Think about questions as you have done something that sparked a thought for someone else, and they might want to ask you about that. And then the companion to don't be afraid of questions is don't be afraid to say, you know what, that is a great question. I don't know the answer, but thank you for bringing that up. It's something that I want to go back and look at, or I want to think about. Don't be afraid of questions. They really do play an important role, and they demonstrate that you said something that somebody else was able to formulate a thought about, and that really is a compliment.
Go ahead, Dr. Curtis.
Yes. Oh,
I thought you.
I guess I could add to this though. The or what I was going to say was being most of us Dr. Sharp and when we love being mentors, and I think I love being a mentor. That was the best part of my job. And so whether it was about audiology or military, being an officer, whatever, but I think when people ask me questions, I love to hear myself talk. So I feel like most of us feel that way. So, even if it's an easy question. But another part of that is I wouldn't be afraid to ask questions because especially when I was talking, I just learned something, so I'm learning something about them, but I'm also learning like let's look for this answer together, because chances are they might not know either, or they might find a different way to learn it. So that's what I learned in my tenure. So.
Denise.
I think for me specifically, and I know this happened a lot in college, I would sit there and be like, oh my goodness, they tell you, oh, there's no such thing as a stupid question. And then you sit there and you're like, okay, I think there probably is. And they're just saying that. And I found myself so many times after class saying like, okay, here are my 5 questions that I didn't ask because I was afraid to. And then over time, you just start to realize that there's so many people that also had that same question and had that same mentality. And I think it just got to a point where I was like, okay, I'm going to ask. Worst case scenario is that I'm told, that's not a valid question, but if you reword it this way, then this is what I think you're looking for. So yeah, definitely don't be afraid to ask questions. There truly is no such thing as a stupid question. And again, you'd be surprised how many people in that room have that same question. If you're thinking it, then there's a chance that someone else is too.
Oh, absolutely. There are at least 2 people that are having that same thought, that same question. Okay, I'm going to move over to Crystal. Dr. Riska, can you share what attracted you to vestibular audiology and what experiences in your undergrad or your graduate program supported you working with people who aren't very balanced and are a little dizzy?
Yeah, sure. So when I was an undergrad, I earlier mentioned I was a comm sciences major, but I also minored in biology and I was really interested in genetics at the time. And so when I started grad school, honestly, I got really lucky, if I'm just being really transparent. I ended up at an institution that had an individual who was doing kind of genetics of inner ear loss. So they were looking at age-related hearing loss and looking at the phenotype, the outward presentation of both hearing and vestibular, and trying to understand similarities and differences in how the ear ages. And so I just had this really, really wonderful mentor in my graduate program who allowed me to go along with them. But what was interesting is she was a basic scientist. She used mouse models, and I figured out very early on that that was not something that I was particularly interested in doing long term. And so she gave me the space and helped make connections to other clinical researchers and clinical providers so that I could gain the skills and the knowledge that I needed to continue to learn about that area. So for me, it started out as this area that I was interested in, finding a mentor, and then taking advantage of opportunities that both that mentor and myself helped to cultivate throughout my career. You know, I love vestibular assessment. If anyone on this call has even the smallest desire to learn more about dizziness and dizziness assessments, I'm happy to chat with you about it. I think audiology is so uniquely poised in a multidisciplinary team to really contribute to how we improve the outcomes of those patients that are honestly often passed along for a very long time. And so I just had a lot of really wonderful mentors and opportunities to kind of grow that area and that passion.
Mhm.
Oh, that's so awesome to have a talk on how important mentorship is. And I think it's reflected in our panel today of each of you were so enthused to be able to connect with students. So my next question, we're going to go back to Denise. Denise, you started your career as an audiologist with the VA before transitioning to Special Olympics International. Can you talk about the benefits of recognizing different opportunities, growing one's skill set, and being open to both change and travel? And I know that there are several of you on the panel that can talk about this.
And so starting out at the Las Vegas VA and then shifting to Special Olympics was a big move for me. It was nerve-wracking because I loved my job at the VA where I had worked for 7 years and I felt settled. And I mean, come on, it's Las Vegas. Like, who's not going to love that? But embracing this new opportunity as the Healthy Hearing Discipline Manager has been eye-opening for me. It's given me the chance to work and travel globally, improve the health of people with intellectual disabilities, and team up with audiologists around the world to set up hearing screenings and truly, truly, truly make a difference for our athletes. So I would say that being open to change and travel has helped me grow, not just at work, because now I have a ton of admin and public health skills under my belt that I didn't have before, but also in life overall. And I think looking back, I'm so glad I stepped out of my comfort zone. Otherwise, I'd probably still be at the VA, which is great. It's not a bad thing, but it wouldn't have let me experience this kind of growth. All that to say is that there's a massive world out there and you shouldn't be afraid to go after what excites you. And I think that that was my big thing. Again, I was comfortable. I was like, the VA is great. I don't have to sell hearing aids. I have a certain kind of schedule. Now I'm going into this big world and I'm not sure what I'm doing, and public health is so new. But again, I'm so glad that I took that chance on myself, because again, I just love what I do and how much more I'm able to help.
I love those words, taking a chance on yourself, Denise.
Yes,
And
always bet
absolutely.
on yourself for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. More on that. Before I move on, does anyone else have anything to add on taking a chance on yourself? That's like, I want to have a bullhorn and just like right around with that. I think for students, a lot of times it is a question of like, do I want to stay home? Do I want to travel? Do I want to step out and try something new? And knowing that it'll work out, like you can bet on yourself.
No, for sure. And, I'm from New Jersey. I went to school in Philadelphia. So when it came time to my externship, I was like, okay, I'm so used to living at home. Even in Philadelphia, my mother visited me every weekend. I was like, Mom, you got to stop. So I was like, okay, what's going to be that like experience for me? And it ended up being Vegas, and it was supposed to just be a 1 year deal. And then I met my husband, and, it was history after that. But I was thinking to myself, had I not taken that chance on myself, I wouldn't have had a great experience. I wouldn't have met my husband. So there is some comfort in knowing that if you step out, worst case scenario, you don't like it and then you go back to what you're comfortable with, but that shouldn't limit you from doing something completely different and out of your comfort zone. You never know what great things can come out of it.
I would add to that. I had a kind of a similar situation for my 4th year. I knew I was interested in pediatrics and I knew in my heart that was what I wanted to do full time, but there aren't that many opportunities to do like full-time pediatric audiology, right? And I had a 4th year that I had already done a rotation at. They were like, if you want to come back here, it's adult and pediatrics. So I would get to do a little bit of what I love to do, but I would probably do what I was going to end up doing. It was in the town my wife grew up in, so her parents had just moved away and they were holding on to their house. They're like, we'll sell it to you guys. I was like, this is so easy. This is so straightforward. And then I talked to a friend who had had an experience with their 4th year in Atlanta at a children's hospital. They take one 4th year. It was 3 states away from me. Like, there was no way that was ever going to materialize. I was like, I'm just going to apply because that's like the dream. And it would be so cool to live in this big city and, do something really fun. And my wife was on board with it. And I was like, I'm just going to apply. And it rolled, and it all worked out, and that's where we ended up. And I definitely 100% would not be doing what I'm doing right now if I hadn't had the experience there where I met a mentor who was a pediatric cochlear implant audiologist who taught me everything I know. I mean, it completely changed the trajectory of everything. Just applying, just to do it, because who knows? So yeah, I'm right there with Denise. If you're one of those people who's not so sure and there's the safe bet and the dream, it doesn't hurt to just give it a shot, right? There's no harm in applying because it could change everything.
Excellent advice. So I see Sophia nodding her head.
Yes.
I don't know if she wants to give some wisdom.
I do. So for me, I'm born and raised in New York, did everything in New York, undergrad in New York, went to Montclair for my doctorate, did my 4th year in New York, and I said, I'm never leaving. This is my home. And then I heard about this cochlear implant fellowship at the University of Miami. And I was like, you know what? I've never been to Florida. Spoke to the people at an ASHA conference. I'm like, let's see. I applied. I got it. And I found out that since I got it, I had to go. Moved all the way to Florida, never left New York or New Jersey in my entire life. Moved to Florida, and here I am now, still in Florida. I get to work at Here USA, and I get to do balance. I get to do pediatrics. I don't do cochlear implants anymore, which is the downside, but have my own schedule. I'm able to do VNGs and get to see kids how I want to. I have everything that I need, and it's a beautiful experience I would have never got the chance to have if it wasn't for me taking a chance on myself and speaking to the people at speaking to the University of Miami at an ASHA conference. I went as a student, volunteer, and I was like, you know what? Let me give it a try, and it changed my whole life.
Oh, that is awesome. And see what happens when you just go up and meet people and they pour life and encouragement into you. And then you end up a cochlear implant audiologist. Like who knew? But so speaking of mentorship, I'm going to go to Donna Smiley. So Donna, my question for you is, have you had any mentors or colleagues who have significantly influenced your career as an educational audiologist? And how important do you think mentorship is for students and even our new professionals or early career professionals?
I absolutely have been privileged to have a lot of mentors in my career. And one of the things that I would tell this group, as students, oftentimes we think that mentors are just going to serendipitously happen. And sometimes they do. Sometimes somebody that you meet or that you work with becomes a mentor. But other times we have to be a little bit more intentional about seeking out those mentors. I certainly, the person that I mentioned, the professor in my undergrad program, while she wasn't an educational audiologist, she certainly became a mentor. My first boss when I worked at Arkansas Children's Hospital, Dr. Patty Martin, became a mentor and is till this day. One of a little bit of a different mentorship was Dr. Cheryl Johnson, who, if you're interested, those of you who have some interest in educational audiology will know her to be the lead author on the Educational Audiology Handbook. Cheryl and I met back in the early 1990s. I went to one of the first meetings of the Educational Audiology Association, and it was a very small group of people, and we just connected there and have continued to communicate. And so I consider her, and she knows that, one of my mentors. But again, I also think that I've had opportunity to meet other people along the way who have worked in this role or worked in the role of educational school-based audiology that I've had a chance to connect with. So I think mentorship is really important. I think if things don't happen in a natural way because maybe those people aren't in your path, that you certainly should try to seek some of those individuals out. You might meet them at a conference. You might meet them by volunteering for ASHA or for another organization that has audiologists as members. You also may just have to seek someone out. It will sound kind of weird to you as a student right now, but somewhere down the road in your career, somebody's going to reach out to you and say, you don't know me, but I understand that you do XYZ, and I would really like a chance to talk with you. And what I would tell you is that in as much as you can give a little bit of that time to other professionals in your field, please do that. Because people are going to be willing to do that for you. And one day I hope that you'll be willing to do that for other people. It's amazing what even a 30-minute conversation can do to really help somebody figure out, where do they want to go on this journey? Where do they want to go? What pathway do they want to take? So don't be afraid to reach out to people. If you know somebody that you'd like to have a conversation with that's in a certain practice area, I would say there's at least a 50-50 chance that they'll say yes, and probably a lot more than that, because of the way that the people that are in our field feel about mentoring and helping other people move along in this profession.
I see Kwame's unmuted himself. Do you have?
Well, I was going to add to Dr. Smiley's about, when you're picking your mentors, you definitely want to be very intentional about it. But also, you don't have to just pick one. You can pick as many as you want, right? And because there are some wonderful people out there, and what the best part about that is, what I learned early in my career is that some mentors are bad mentors, but you can still learn from them, because that's the type of person that, oh, I don't want to do it that way, or I didn't like the way that they did things, and that's not gonna be part of how I'm going to build my practice or my clinic or whatever you're looking at. And so that's why you just want a bunch of mentors. And but also another thing that she reminded me of is that, yeah, you can reach out to people. The first time I met Linda Hood or Dr. Hall was because I just wrote them, and I had a question, and then when I saw them in person, it was like I had something to, we had something to talk about, and so and they knew who I was, and that was great. Those were people who wrote my books, and and they were happy to give me another, or send me an email back. So don't be afraid just to reach out to folks.
Absolutely. And I have a question, let's see, from the Q&A. Oh, so this question is, how can someone volunteer for ASHA? And what does volunteering look like? And I'm going to go to Donna. But before I go to Donna, I think I would also encourage you to not just volunteering with ASHA, we're going to talk about that in a minute, but remember our morning session that we want you to get involved at what's going on locally in your state, your university, no limits. But I'm going to go to Donna about how can you volunteer for ASHA?
Sure. Well, and I'll ask, hopefully some of our other staff members will help me with some links that they can drop into the chat. But what's interesting, and I think the reason that Marquita's picking on me is because before I came on staff at ASHA, I had a long history of volunteering some very what I would call micro opportunities that were one had a very specific purpose. I also had the opportunity back about 10 years ago to serve on the board of directors. So what I would say is certainly look for opportunities. For example, I suspect, and Alexis, you could probably back me up on this, but I suspect that through our national NISLA association, that we're getting ready, if we haven't already, to ask students to say, hey, I'm interested in volunteering for the ASHA convention this year. I know on the staff side, we've been asked to let staff know if we need volunteers for different parts of the convention. And because the convention's in DC, it's also celebrating our 100th anniversary. So it's going to be kind of a big deal. So if you're a national NISLA member and you wanted to volunteer, I bet Alexis can help us with that. The other thing is that oftentimes we will put out calls for very specific, maybe we need subject matter experts about certain topics. There is a committee or volunteer pool form that we're using right now, and that's what I need. And if nobody can find it, I'll get it here in a second and drop it in the chat. Sometimes, certainly, volunteering with National NISLA as a member, I believe I've seen that our National NISLA group needs some local or regional representation for different parts of the country. So there are lots of opportunities now, but even when you become a working professional, there'll be other opportunities too. And then I want to say one more thing and I'll stop. And that is to what Marquita was mentioning. You know, you don't necessarily need your first volunteer opportunity with ASHA doesn't have to necessarily be president or, president or of ASHA or die kind of thing, but you certainly can start in your own workplace. Be the person who says, hey, do we want to have a professional development, a lunch and learn one day? Oh, I'll take that on. I'll be responsible for setting that up for us. Or for your state association, whether that be a state academy of audiology or a state speech language hearing association, oftentimes they're happy if you would say, hey, let me coordinate the moderators for a convention this year, or let me help work the registration desk. There are lots of ways to get involved that are small ways. And then those often lead to more opportunities. I will say, and I am one who believes that in the ASHA sphere, us audiologists are the special children. We are not the stepchildren. I've had that theory for my whole career, but we often need more audiologists to volunteer for things. So don't be afraid to let staff know. If you see a call for volunteers, certainly let us know. I do think in the next year or two, you're going to see a difference in how we recruit volunteers, and it's going to be a better way. And it's going to give you opportunity to kind of give us some information about how you are the task that are the areas that you want to volunteer in. So that's just a little bit of an idea from a volunteer standpoint.
Absolutely. And keeping with volunteering, I'm going to switch question and throw this to her unexpectedly back to Crystal. I know that she has volunteered. She's raised her hand to be on the ASHA Board of Ethics. So, and this is actually how I got to meet her and connect with her the first time. Not because I did anything wrong, but working at ASHA. What has surprised you the most, Crystal, about working or volunteering with the Ethics Board? And how important is it for audiologists to be professionally engaged with, professional associations?
Yeah, so I'll start by saying I'll piggyback on what Donna said, which is that I didn't start on the board, and I'll get to the Board of Ethics in just a second. But I started as a volunteer a decade ago. I hate saying that. That feels a really long time ago now. Actually, longer than a decade ago, but we'll say a decade for fun. But the first volunteer opportunity that I took at ASHA was to help review abstracts for the convention for one of the subcommittees. And I think that gets back to some of the things that have been said about mentorships. And I think there are mentors and then there are sponsors, people who help provide opportunities for you. And so that's where I started. And I did that for many, many years. And then about 4 years ago, I decided to join the Board of Ethics and actually more recently wrapped up that service obligation, although I think I will be joining for another year here shortly. And so, on the Board of Ethics, we're always looking for audiologists because part of those boards, right, is to have a voice at the table and to have our profession represented. And the pool of volunteers for audiologists is actually pretty small. And so it's a really great opportunity because cases that are relevant to audiology come up, and it's really important that the board has the expertise to adjudicate those cases and to make sure that our point of view is heard. Practice settings in a lot of cases matter, and what we do as a professional standard matters. And so that was a really unique opportunity for me being on the board because that was a much bigger time commitment than the ASHA convention volunteers. So I think there's a lot of different ways in which you can volunteer depending upon where you are kind of in your life and in your career and what your, professional and personal requirements are at that time because we all have things that extend beyond our professional lives as well. Did
And
that
I love
answer
this.
that?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. I love this, that we can talk about the importance of volunteering and just being professionally engaged and having a seat at the table, a voice at the table. I'm going to go to Kwame, Dr. Curtis. I met him actually at a triple A, like so ASHA exhibits at triple A. And I remember he was like, what are you guys doing here? But I think it's a great conversation of collectively professionals that we all work together to support the profession of audiology. So, Dr. Curtis, could you lend your voice to or your opinion, the importance of being just like professionally engaged and making the time to volunteer, and why that is so important and why you make time for that with your busy schedule.
Well, the short answer is it's very enriching for me. That's kind of part of, I'm going to say this a lot. In the military, it was very important that we got out and volunteered in the community anyway. But as far as audiology is concerned, when I was in the military, I wasn't able to volunteer nearly as much with AAA or ASHA. And but I always sent my dues. It was kind of a thing that, of course, the military paid for that. So anyway, the point is that I always wanted to, especially when I got further in my career, I couldn't volunteer nearly as much. But as soon as I came out, what I found out what was important was, especially talking to private practice owners and folks out here that are the practice is their livelihood, getting reimbursed, which is something I didn't have to concern myself about in the military. Some other things about how we present ourselves to patients and how we get patients through the door and how are we going to help patients. These things were certainly on the minds of all audiologists, and those are things that I was like, well, I'm interested in that. Let me be a part of that. So I really should have started like on smaller committees when I came out of the military, and those folks that are really on those smaller committees are so valuable, and you learn so much. And even though you're putting in a couple of hours at a time, you really understand the inner workings of ASHA and AAA. And then when you get to a point where you're on the board, as I currently am now, you really become a whole lot more useful at that level. And I'm not saying that I'm not useful. I'm just saying that I could probably learn a whole lot more had I started at smaller committees when I first came out of the military, even though I had done a lot of that early on in my career, because it was kind of ingrained in us to get out there and do things. But as I did more in volunteering, I really found that it's very rewarding, and so even in the community now that I'm in, I always try to do something. So I think that's it's just kind of ingrained in me. It's a really bad answer. I'm sorry. It's other than the fact that it's just really kind of, kind of a thing that I do. Yeah, that's.
Yeah. No, that's a great answer. That it's enriching. It's,
Yeah,
you can volunteer for selfish reasons sometimes,
yeah.
which makes me go to Denise. Speaking of volunteering, so Denise is with Special Olympics International, and, working with members of our community who have intellectual or developmental disabilities, as far as how do you develop that skill set, you're volunteering, the potential to find a mentor. My question is, can you tie mentorship to developing new skills, to new opportunities, new adventures? And just what your thoughts are for that?
Yeah,
Because it's all
sure.
volunteering.
Yes. I mean, we can't do what we do without volunteers, that's for sure. But I think mentorship can totally be a game changer when it comes to picking up new skills and spotting cool opportunities, especially in a global role like running the Healthy Hearing program. And honestly, mentors can be anyone, whether it's a senior coworker, a former professor, and even for us, like our own volunteers. For me, these individuals have brought different experiences and fresh ideas that have helped me handle tough situations, share tips on how to run an inclusive health program, which I've never done before, and have sparked creative solutions for me. And I also think it's not just about learning the technical stuff either. It's about building leadership skills, learning how to work as a team with different organizations, and showing how collaboration can make a real difference. I mean, working with groups like ASHA has opened doors for me personally to be able to speak on panels like this, and it's shown me how much we can accomplish when we team up and all these opportunities that are available. And even my mentor till this day is that professor from undergrad who took me under his wing. His name is Dr. Alan Gertner. I'm not sure if he sounds familiar to anyone, but to me, he's the greatest of all time. And just again, opportunities with ASHA. When I presented at the conference this past year, I met someone from the Arizona Department of Education who then wanted me to do some inclusive health training for some individuals here in Arizona. Connections with ASHA have allowed me to get on phone calls with the Pan American Health Organization. So you just never know what attending one conference can do, or, who you're speaking to. I know Special Olympics, when someone hears that that's where I work, they're like, oh, I always think that it's just sport related. I didn't know you guys had an entire health discipline tied to, 9 different disciplines. We have podiatry, we have mental health, we have dentistry, we have audiology. So I think for me, that's the selling point, because then I get everyone asking me questions. I can be a little introverted, so it's nice when they're like, oh, Denise, what is it that you really do at Special Olympics? And it takes away some of that awkwardness that I tend to have when I have to ask questions. So yeah, mentorships and developing leadership skills and just talking to other organizations just to accomplish one goal is definitely important in the work that we do.
Absolutely. And I love that volunteering, you're giving something back, but you get so much more in return, be it a great experience, a new skill set, a mentor. And in particular, if you have like a special area of interest or a curiosity. So going back to Dakota Sharp with that curiosity, can you tell us what attracted you to pediatric audiology? And I think you gave us a little bit on like how you made it to your current position, but I speak a lot about people who are like, I don't want to work with kids, but I'm like, you should try it. Just just try it out first. Go ahead.
Totally. And before I answer that question, just circling back to the volunteering thing, one of the reasons, so as soon as I graduated and I started my first job, there were 3 different like state level organizations that had a need on like a board, and I was like, I'll just help. It was a little too much too fast, I'll say that, just to be honest. But the reason I did that was because as a student, we toured ASHA for a day. This was like pre-2020, so I don't know if y'all still do that, but we toured it, and I walked around and I was like, this is just people like making all of these things happen. Like big laws are being passed. People need to work on this. Like it's just other audiologists doing this. So people have to do it, right? So when I graduated, I was like, I'm going to help be one of those people. And what I found was, the reason there were openings is because there's a need. Other people aren't, jumping in and volunteering. I got stretched a little bit thin. I learned my lesson. Now I'm only on 2. So that's a lesson for you. Maybe don't do 3 right out of the gate. But I would just say, like, something we don't realize is things keep moving forward. Our roles improve, our reimbursement hopefully is improving, right? Like all these things need to happen. We need more audiologists. All of that is true. And it only happens when people like step up and actually do it. So if there is any part of you that is open to that, like you kind of have to. It's like your professional obligation to make things better for all of us. All of us each have to do our part. So that's what I would say is that volunteering is super, super important. And if you're even a little bit of a person who's willing to do it, I'm telling you, it's going to be such a rewarding thing, like everyone else has said, but also it's just so necessary because we can't make progress unless we're all doing it together. Okay, so that's my first thing. And then to pediatrics, look, if you came into audiology because you wanted something easy breezy, you picked the wrong career in general. But if you really want a challenge, if you really want, like, to have to be your most creative self, that is where pediatrics thrives. I have never had to be more creative in my problem solving than I've had to be as a pediatric audiologist. And that's not just in testing kids, which you do have to be very creative, right? There's going to be moments where you're getting a meltdown and you need to be able to quickly figure out, okay, what's the thing that I need to do here that we can pivot to so we can get as much information as we can? What game? How am I going to pull this back? You're not just dealing with the patient and their hearing loss, which is an aspect of it, but also their family, who is just as much a part of the process. And how do I communicate with them and make them understand these concepts and get them on board? So it's a huge team element of working in pediatrics, not just with families, but also kids with hearing loss are much more likely to have other involvement as well, right? So we're gonna have a lot of other professionals I'm regularly talking with. I'm very fortunate to be at a center where literally next door through that wall is an SLP, and around that corner there is a social worker. They're all right next door to me. We're all like, close friends, and we work together with these kids. So you have to be able to communicate with others really well. So a lot of problem solving there. But also, like, it is just, I mean, I don't want to be rude to my friends working with adults, but it's so much fun. We're out here, we're flossing, we're dancing, we're drawing spiders. That's one of the things we did today. Today I got to paint a little girl's nails while we did ESRT to try to keep her still. That's our new hack, is nail painting.
Oh, that's such a good
It works
idea.
very, very well, right? Get some nail polish. I'll be honest, most of the kids don't love it that I'm the one doing it because it's going to look really bad compared to my coworkers who do like straight up manicure level, but it gets the job done. So yeah, just the level of creativity, the problem solving, I can't recommend it enough. If you want to, even if you're not sure you want to work with kids and you want to challenge yourself as an audiologist, just give it a try. Just see what you think, because you're gonna I think it'll surprise you what muscles you have to flex that you didn't quite learn in school to be a good pediatric audiologist.
I love that. I think the flexing different muscles is always super helpful. Kwame, did you have something to add?
I just remember in college where it got around the clinic that I did not want to work with children. And it was Tina McNamara who found this out and put me on clinic that next semester with children. And it turned out to be awesome. I thought it was great. And even though the first 2 weeks were just murder, it was like after that, like kids are just wonderful. So there's no reason to be afraid of them.
Absolutely. I too thought that I did not want to work with children, and then I kept on being sent to birthing hospitals and schools. And I was like, oh, these children are wearing me out. But it ended up being very rewarding and a lot of fun. So it's always nice to try it just in case. We are going to do our last question. I'm going to post this one because it's coming from our attendee, Addison Dixon, which is a great question. And I'd love to hear each of you answer this one. Looking back, what steps would you take if you were an undergrad or graduate student again? That's nice. Some of us have to look a little bit further back than others, but let's start with Sophia.
So I think about this a lot when thinking about undergrad. So I always knew I wanted to do audiology since I was 8 years old, like I mentioned, which I know sounds insane. It's mostly because I'm stubborn, and my dad said, "You won't pick this career for the rest of your life." And I told him to watch me. So here I am. But one thing I would really try to do when I was an undergrad, I was able to observe an audiologist in a private practice. And that was something that I never wanted to do private practice. Sorry, Kwame. And that was the only opportunity I had to observe. I know if I tried to be a little more, I guess, open and try to speak to other audiologists, reach out to see if I can observe, I would have had more opportunities versus me in grad school. I did every single internship under the sun. I did peds, I did a hospital placement, I did a vestibular placement, I did a cochlear implant placement to try to get my feet wet. And I wish I took more opportunities because I had a lot of classmates tell me, oh, yeah, I worked a summer at a hospital as a newborn hearing screener. I did this. So, trying to get your feet wet, learning more things about the field, and knowing that there's more than just hearing aids is very important because, I mean, I work with hearing aids, I would say about 2 days a week, but really I'm pediatric heavy, which is something I never thought I would say in my life. And I love it. And it's just getting your feet wet and trying new things.
Excellent advice. Love getting the feet wet. Okay, over to Denise.
I would say for me, I would have liked to have done more things outside of audiology to become more of a well-rounded person. Like, you know what courses you have to take and what you need to graduate and what summer classes you need to take. But I wish I would have joined that debate team or that book club or sewing or American Sign Language or something outside of audiology because I think my world became audiology. And I think that that's what burnt me out a lot sometimes. So I think if I would have focused on other things, to become well-rounded, I think that would have helped a lot in college. So I would say my suggestion would be just to take that fun class, even if it's not something that you need to graduate, just to take the stress off of audiology and not just make audiology your entire personality.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, because burnout is real. So you
Very
want to
real.
be mindful of that. Okay, next, Kwame.
Yeah, so what Sophia said was important. I believe that trying everything, as far as your training, be open to everything, I guess. Don't just say you're going to do electrophys or whatever. That I thought that was so. I guess that what I would do differently though is uh, I would have taken at least like and depending on your program, maybe your program does this now. I'm far removed, but I would do something. And if you have any desire to do anything in your own practice, I would do at least one, two business courses, something to kind of understand how business works and and understand how you want your business to run on that side. But just like Denise said, like I agree. Like I took acting classes. I was actually an athlete in college as well. Like my college career was awesome, and because I was doing all those things, I am able to draw off a lot of those things. Public speaking because I did acting courses. Like just I don't know. I feel like everything that everyone says is just great. So I agree.
Excellent. Yes, that trying those different things is a big plus. Okay, next we'll hear from Crystal.
I think I'm going to echo what several people said, but I really wholeheartedly agree with Dr. Curtis here. I think there are so many areas adjacent to audiology that make us better clinicians and better researchers and better educators and better mentors that, thinking about how we take advantages of these other areas in our undergrad to either build our resume, but to learn skills and knowledge that we can apply then to audiology. So I think if I had to do it again, I would have thought a little more outside of the box of just comm sciences as the way to get to audiology, and thinking about how I could build my toolbox to have those skills that maybe we don't necessarily always focus on in audiology.
I love the theme that we have here. Next, Dakota.
Yeah, gonna echo that too. Was very happy just out of an interest. I took some graphic design and video editing classes in college, and being every job I ever had, I've basically just become like the social media person. It's like Donna was saying earlier, like you do a good job, they give you another job. So that's just evolved into a lot of the different organizations I'm a part of, which it's not my favorite thing to do, like social media stuff, but being able to still do the graphic design element is pretty fun, and integrating thinking, one of the things I like to do is take some of the research our team is doing and figure out ways to make that accessible in a social media post with visuals. And it's a fun way to continue to do something creative that isn't necessarily like audiology. And I would say one thing I would do as a student again would be to definitely dive more into research opportunities. Just about every AUD program has people doing important research as a part of that program. And as an undergrad, I tried to dip my toes in, and it was fine, but it was like I was overwhelmed. I had too much other stuff going on. So I was like, I don't know if this is so much for me. And then I had to do research in grad school, and I was behind my peers who had all been a part of labs and things prior to that. And then now I'm in a role where I'm doing clinical research, and I'm like, what is the right statistic? So like I wish back then I would have really stuck to it then, because you don't really know what your role could be years later, and having that really strong foundation, that's good for everybody. You're going to continue to read journal articles. These are never going to go away. So don't glaze over that statistics class. Don't skip through that research methods class and just try to get to the next thing that's clinical. And if you're me, fun. Like that's why I'm like, I don't care about this, is not nearly as fun. So I would say definitely pay attention in those classes is what I would have done.
Absolutely. Those Tukey tests come back to haunt you later. Okay, I know that we're over time, but we're going to wrap it up with Donna as our last pearl of wisdom.
Well, what I would tell you is that if I could go back, I would be more appreciative of the experiences that I had the opportunity to participate in. I went to an undergrad program that was undergrad only. We did not have a graduate program. So they ran a full clinic at Henderson State University in Arkadelphia, Arkansas. And I had a lot of experience by the time that I graduated that let me know I wanted to be an audiologist and not a speech language pathologist, but I would appreciate those experiences more if I could go back. So I hope that kind of gives students something to think about, whether it be in your grad program or thinking about your own undergrad program. Really take advantage and appreciate the opportunities that you are given, even when you aren't sure that they meet what you think you want to do for the future.
Thank you, Donna. That is a great way for us to wrap up our panel. I want to thank each of you for agreeing to join us today. I feel I am a mid-career professional and I feel motivated, inspired from just being able to talk with you all for this past hour. We have come to the end of our program. We're a little over time. Please let me thank you all for giving us your time and attention. Now that we've been together, you have a friend at ASHA. If you have any questions, you can email me. You can also send an email to Nisla. You'll receive a email from me, every attendee, which will include the links and resources from today. Also, I ask that you fill out a survey to share your thoughts about our program, which we have tried to revamp to be more tangible and processable for U.S. students. Thank you so much again to each of the panelists. I love how different each of you are with different experiences, and yet we still have so much in common. And that is what I will leave you and our students with today. Thank you so much. I'm going to write this off as a success. Give myself a pat on the back for having such a great panel. Thank you so much. And I expect to see each of you around because the world of audiology is in fact small. So thanks everyone.